Ben Shapiro recently had a speech that I think made him look very mendacious. He was trying to show that he is part of the real conservative movement. The traditional red old guard movement. Listening to his words really made me become scrupulous of the old conservative movement itself. I began to ask myself questions. If you ever want to figure out the truth in any matter, the way to begin is to ask yourself questions. And then that information flows like water. Then you become aware of the truth. My basic question is, what has conservatism conserved? In my opinion, that's a necessary question, since the fundamental purpose of the Conservative Party is conservation. The word conserve means to protect something, especially from an environmentally or culturally important place, or thing from harm or destruction. So the fundamental question that I am stipulating is, what has conservatism preserved? And this is especially important coming from someone like myself, who identifies with a preponderance of conservative ideas. The debt is $22 trillion. About 16% of the general public works for the U.S. government. The average taxpayer has to work until April to pay for the basic functions and the bills of the U.S. government. In 2019, the U.S. government spent $4.45 trillion. Debt to GDP is 103%. So that means our bills, the cost of the government, the cost to the taxpayer, is higher than the entire GDP of the goods and services that we produce. Our borders are out of control and have precipitated into a crisis. And this creates acrimony in the Conservative Party, which is why you elect somebody like Trump, because of the failure to conserve. And this acrimony goes to the party itself, because the United States is no longer autonomous. We do not have the ability to control the geographic region of our country and our basic laws itself. But that is why I am always very careful when it comes to obfuscating my thought process. You've got to be able to offer your thoughts based upon facts, evidence, and what is around you that you perceive, rather than conjecture. But that is why, as an individual whose goal is personal freedom for the individual, and when you have that goal in mind, you think that the individual can decide what education is right for themselves, what religion or lack of religion is best for them and their families. You believe in economic freedom, low taxes, low regulations on businesses. Personal freedom for the individual is my goal. And when you understand that the Conservative Party has failed to do that based on the metrics that you measure, when you make a claim, if you say player A is better than player B, you have to offer a metric that shows why you believe a certain way. So the question I have to these traditional conservatives, these George Wills, these Ben Shapiros, these never Trumpers, is quite simple. What has traditional conservatism conserved? And to their hero, Reagan, who I happen to like, I think he was a good president, but Reagan extended the size of the federal government. He didn't conserve the size of the federal government. Reagan increased debt to GDP. Reagan gave amnesty to illegal immigrants. Reagan increased the debt. So Reagan did not conserve the federal government. He also failed to take action in one of his fundamental campaign promises, and that was to end the infancy of the Department of Education. Under Reagan, it started off as an infant, and now it's grown into a monster. And that's what happens with these government agencies when they are created. What about President Bush? President Bush increased the size of the federal government, created the Department of Homeland Security. President Bush doubled the debt. So if you want to be technical, if you want to be intellectually honest, Reagan and Bush were not conservatives in the sense that they conserved anything. If you want to be technical about it all, Trump has been more conservative than either of the past presidents, in the sense that Trump has decreased the scope and size of the federal government through the regulatory agencies. Trump has cut taxes across the board. He has appointed judges that want to conserve the traditions of the country. But that's why individuals like Ben Shapiro want more localized power over the conservative movement. They want to be controlled opposition. They want to be the party that complains but doesn't actually do anything to solve the problem itself. That's why you've got to be very incredulous when you hear these individuals say these things. But that's why I would love to ask one of these traditional conservatives, what has traditional conservatism conserved? And what metric do you use to measure your conservation of these institutions, the size of government, and the border itself? I'm asking these questions as someone who is a conservative/libertarian. I just believe, like I stated, in economic freedom, personal freedom, religious freedom, maximum freedom for the individual, and a very small government that is limited in scope.